Some fans would have beat the bunny out of bed this Easter Sunday, with queues stretching from the main gates of Energy Australia Stadium hours before kick-off as the early birds chased the best seats. But once inside, the sellout crowd stood as one for their favourite son. Having equalled Tony Butterfield's club record of 229 games, it was only fitting he passed the mantle on.
What we've been privileged enough to be able to witness over a long period of time is something that ourselves and our grandchildren will carry with us.
Soon after, Johns ran out for his 230th, but there was a man on stage right that soon held the spotlight as the Cowboys held all the early pressure. On their first real chance, Newcastle didn't miss, with Kurt Gidley dishing it up for brother Matt. Badiris was out to bruise the Cowboys' half, but most damage came to Paul Simpkins' calf. The referee had to be replaced, but it didn't matter who was in charge to Mitchell Sargent, who opened up the Queenslanders' account. Then a Gidley speculator struck pay dirt for Carmont. It was a high-quality affair from two form sides, but the tide turned on the hour as Thurston took hold of this arm wrestle. Matt Bowen followed with the match winner with a special 5 minutes from time. The Waves finally arrived for finals day, and on his home break, Newcastle's Jim Lear found himself in the four-man final of the Pro Division. In contrast, Daniel Worsley hails from South Africa, but travels the Australian circuit in search of sand and surf. Michael Chappell was having his say too in the decider, but there was really no matching Ryan Hardy. The West Australian is hailed as one of the world's best on a bodyboard, and he did it easy in the big one. After catching his first wave, he knew one more decent ride would seal it. When he did land his second high-scoring ride, that was all he needed to score the second round of the national circuit.
It was a packed house at Christchurch Cathedral as both young and old members of the Anglican community united to celebrate the life and resurrection of Jesus Christ. A beam of sunlight shone through the stained glass windows, illuminating the choir as its angelic song filled the huge room. The Very Reverend Bishop Brian Farron delivered his first Easter address in Newcastle since being enthroned in June last year. But while Easter is a Christian holiday, the true meaning of it was perhaps not at the forefront of the minds of thousands of children at Foreshore Park. They were instead preparing for a great hunt. The Easter egg, which represents fertility and new life, is easily the most identifiable symbol of the season, and 30,000 of them were strewn across the lawn. Some were very organised with their collection, while others just held on to them any way they knew how. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. The scenes being shot in inner-city Newcastle are for a Korean television series called One Fine Day, and that's exactly what Mother Nature turned on for producers today. Several streets were blocked off from 4 a.m. as crews prepared to film an action scene involving a car chase with gunfire. Producers of the series chose Newcastle as it was something outside of the ordinary.
They wanted something that wasn't always seen in TV, like the Opera House in Harbour Bridge. So it's been a first-time experience, but so far it's been a pleasant one.
More scenes will be filmed in a private home in Merewether tomorrow. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
These paddocks might look a healthy green, but that tinge of colour only hides the underlying drought.
Very dry around this area. Lower Hunter Valley and especially the Upper Hunter Valley is very, very dry. I don't think I've seen things look as bad for this time of the year.
Department of Primary Industries figures released today have confirmed the lower and upper Hunter districts have in the last month lost their battle with pending drought, slipping from marginal to drought declared. The lack of rainfall is the culprit, less than than 500 millimetres falling across the entire region during March, down 50% on last year.
We've just had little bits of rain, sort of an inch here, an inch there, but it just greens things up. There's no great volume in the feed, which is our biggest problem heading into winter.
That has many producers now desperately selling stock while prices are still good. More than 3,000 head of cattle have been offered for sale at the last 3 weekly sales at Scone. Tomorrow's Maitland sale expected to top 1,500.
One of the biggest problems that most producers are having is that their groundwater stocks are getting very low, so they're having trouble with watering stock. So that's one of the biggest reasons that people are putting cattle on the market.
Christy Carter, NBN News. At local beaches, the lucky holidaymakers soaked up the sun on the last day of the Easter long weekend. The picture was a lot less attractive for those travelling home. Traffic queues stretching up to 5 kilometres at Hexham, Bulahdelah and Karua. But not even traffic could slow some down this weekend. Local police issuing more than 2,000 speeding tickets, 500 more than last year.
Our figures up on last year increased significantly, particularly in relation to the targeted categories for drink driving, speed-related offences and non-wearing of occupant restraints, seatbelts and helmets. So on the whole, it's been fairly disappointing.
In the Hunter, more than 70 motorists were fined for not wearing a seatbelt, up 24 on last year, while 157 people were caught drink driving.
People aren't heeding the warning and they will suffer the consequences as a result, with a lot of people losing their licences this weekend.
But police warn motorists doing the wrong thing will still be caught once double demerits end at midnight.
We will continue to work through up until midnight this evening and beyond with the up-and-coming holidays.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
Built in 1883 by a Presbyterian minister, 88 Scott Street became a home away from home for visiting sailors. A chapel was among the features. Now the building needs some redemption of its own.
The state government has just allowed this building to be neglected for so long and has handed the building over to the Land Council without any kind of money to help rehabilitate the building.
Windows that aren't broken are boarded up, paint is peeling, the building itself held together by the proverbial. Squatters are seen frequently in the heritage-listed site, and according to Councillor Keith Parsons, it would have cost $1.5 million to fix up 10 years ago.
If it stands around like this for a couple more years, it may well be uneconomic to do anything with it.
Since vacated by the Education Department, the building was given to the Awabakal Land Council in 2001, but it reportedly cannot afford a thorough restoration. The site now deemed culturally insignificant and likely to be sold.
We've gone past the stage now where we could think about it for community use because the government's washed its hands of the building. Council doesn't have the money to even consider buying it.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
No time is good for an injury, but Kirk Reynoldson must feel like he's cursed. After limited appearances last year, the bushranger has been bailed up again, this time with a calf muscle tear.
It was a bit shattering, mate. Give the door a bit of a whack as I walked past it, but you got to get on with it.
Scans will reveal the full extent of his injury tomorrow, while Andrew Johns is already planning to defy predictions of his stint on the sideline.
You know, really look after it and try to push it and try to get back as quick as possible. So probably miss this week, but hopefully get back for the next week.
It's likely teenager Jared Mullen will replace him at halfback and partner Kurt Gidley in Melbourne against the Storm.
He's ready, he's knocking on the door, and just hopefully him and Kurt can play well.
At least we get a whole week's training under our belt, and the rest of the team, and we have plenty of communication between us.
There's sure to be plenty of that this week on Newcastle's chances without their skipper. While the players get sick of hearing they can't win without him, they know only results can stop the rot.
It'd be nice to get the monkey off our back. I suppose we haven't performed as well as what we would have liked when he hasn't been there before. So it's a good opportunity for us, as you say, and hopefully we can make the most of it.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Last year's grand finalists faced each other in the first round this season, but the Premier's donned a whole new look. Peter Haynes with boots to match. But it's goals, not fashion, that wins competition points, and Derek Sharwood denied Broadmeadow striker his first chance. Teammate Chris Berlin didn't even get that, injured and off. While defender Keegan Woofenden came oh so close for South Cardiff, but at the wrong end. Robbie True with the first real open chance on goal, but the Gunners' leading man was just off target. The second half casualty list almost had a head case chalked up. But in a bad weekend for referee injuries, Jim Lewis was replaced with a calf muscle strain. But imagine what damage Ibrahim Cotery's blast would have caused you had he hit you. From there on, though, Broadmeadow rarely threatened as the Gunners had all the attack. Once Joel Wood sighted goal, he fired off shots from both feet. But chances came and went without result, meaning these two sides shared the competition points.
Como 34.
Nosotros es que este es un gran depredador, ¿sí? Y en un momento...
Screaming out for help, someone to help him, and he just had blood everywhere, and I rang the Triple-O.
It's empty now, but within days this 5-storey car park attached to the Royal Newcastle Centre will be filled to capacity. It boasts 350 new spaces, 318 for patients and visitors, the rest for senior medicos.
Plus, with the construction work over, we have another 150 other car parks which are opening up in the car parks surrounding this new facility.
But with the increasing demand for spaces, it seems unlikely the new parking station will solve the parking problems, with around 5,000 vehicles entering the campus each day. It's now a common sight for cars to be constantly circling the John Hunter, searching for a parking spot.
It's frustrating, especially if you're in pain. Being pregnant and all, it's very hard.
And for many staff, it's a daily irritation.
I leave home at least an hour and a quarter earlier to find a park because sometimes I'm driving around for an hour.
But there could be some relief for employees.
We're always trying our best to improve the number of car spaces here, and we currently have a DA in to put more car parking in as well.
The application currently lodged at Council consists of a 70-space staff car park to be built near the area health headquarters.
While they don't hold a candle to Christmas crowds, Port Stephens is experiencing a very healthy Easter period with visitor numbers well up on last year. Tourism operators say the sunny weather is the catalyst, but it's also thought holidaymakers from Sydney have this year opted to avoid long and expensive road trips up the coast.
It is one of the topics of conversation. Quite often people say it's wonderful that we've got a great weather forecast. It's a shame the petrol wasn't cheaper.
Whatever the reason, tourism companies are doing backflips over the increase in business.
We're up to 100% over the weekend, which is the Easter weekend, and we're now looking towards 70 to 80%.
The rising petrol prices have slugged caravan towing, fuel-guzzling four-wheel drives the hardest.
The caravanners are very wary of their prices, of the affordability of a holiday.
But while they may not be liking it, they still seem to be lumping it.
It's made it a little bit dearer, but I'd still tow a van.
Your holidays is your best time of your life, like with your kids and all that. And it takes time off and all that. Like, yeah, the extra petrol, I don't like it at all.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Last July, human waste was found in Tillagary Creek, bringing the local oyster industry to its knees. The source, leaking septic tanks. Port Stephens Council has since ordered a number of residents in the Saltash Bob's Farm area to repair defective on-site sewages, and so far...
Well, most people have responded and are taking action, and that varies from each case.
Of the 50 ratepayers served with notices to fix their leaking septics, 15 owners are yet to carry out the work, and 2 people have already approached council claiming they simply can't afford it. So council has proposed an interest-free loan. Should the scheme be supported, each hardship case could receive up to $15,000 to upgrade faulty septic tanks.
There would be a time limit on it, and that would be part of the criteria we'd assess there. The information that's in the council paper tonight includes an application form.
No forms as yet for devastated oyster farmers, still waiting for assistance from anyone who'll hear their plight after writing off millions of dollars in stock already. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
With Easter now past, the Knights aren't banking on any miracle comeback for their injured captain, prompting the coach to name teenager Jared Mullen in his place.
Part of our decision was to make a call early and just allow Jared to focus on starting at halfback this week, and we can look forward to maybe Andrew playing the week after or the week after that if need be.
Mullen debuted last season while still at high school, but class will be in again this week with Johns joining the tutorial on how to build a successful combination with Kurt Gidley.
He's going to do a couple of sessions with me and Kurt this week, and I suppose he always, every week, writes stuff up for us to remember for the game, so I suppose he'll do that.
There's no doubt Melbourne will be checking their notes as well, with a game plan sure to include making sure Mullen sees plenty of their bigger men.
I'll get it in Premier League. I'm probably one of the smallest blokes in Premier League as well, so I'm sure I'll get it in first grade.
I think Jared's defensively doing things pretty well also. I think that's part of the expectation now in first grade. You've got to be able to defend in the line, and I'm sure Jared can do that.
Danny Badiris will captain the side in Melbourne, while Clint Newton returns to the starting team in the absence of the injured Kirk Reynoldson. In turn, that opens a spot up for Riley Brown, who returns to the squad. They've been training 4 to 5 times a week for the last few months and have met some good results in a range of pre-season fixtures played both interstate and in Sydney. And after dodging the dangers of a photo shoot on the beach, this morning fans got a chance to get up close to their favourite players over breakfast, with the team for season 2006 on the menu, including some new faces like Sally Lampshire and Emma Costa. There's some old favourites too, with everyone looking up to inaugural captain Reagan Jackson, who returns after having her second child.
Her knowledge and just her ability to work with the other players is a big plus for us, and I think she gives us a little bit of hardness and a good competitive edge to the group.
She'll provide great support for current skipper Jane Altschwager, who believes the side isn't just challenging for a top 4 spot, but is shooting for the premiership.
We're hoping to also take it a few steps further and really challenge the top 3 contenders of that trophy, and we think we've got every right to do that.
In their 2 seasons, twice they've finished 5th, last year missing the semi-finals only on shooting percentage, and the coach wants to take that element out of the equation.
We need to learn to win games well, so that doesn't become an issue this year.
Hunter play the Orioles in the season opener on May 5 in Perth, and you can bet the team can't wait.
"65-year-old Lorraine Maxine Burton of Curry made a brief appearance before Magistrate Sharon Cruz on 3 charges. The allegations include wounding with intent to murder and several counts of maliciously inflicting grievous bodily harm. In police facts tendered to the court, it was alleged Ms Burton stabbed 60-year-old Graham Brooks 6 times in the upper body and hands inside Mr Brooks's Maitland Street Curry home. The victim had to be rushed by road ambulance to John Hunter Hospital for emergency surgery for injuries which included punctures to both lungs. The couple had known each other for 5 years but had not lived together as a de facto couple. It's alleged when Burton was detained at the scene, she told police, "The songs on the radio told me to do it." No plea was entered during today's proceedings, and Magistrate Cruz ordered the 65-year-old retiree to undergo a medical assessment. Lorraine Burton was formally remanded in custody and the case adjourned to the Raymond Terrace Local Court tomorrow. Gary Blair, NBN News.
This is what the lead and zinc smelter at Bullaroo looked like before it ceased operating in September 2003. Much of the site has now been demolished and the remaining 7 heritage buildings built between 1917 and 1925 are all but certain to go the same way. A committee meeting of Lake Macquarie Council has supported demolition of the structures, which include a lead refinery and former ambulance room, saying they're not suitable for reuse.
The report that Council determined last night indicated that they didn't support keeping the buildings based on a number of factors, including the remediation strategy, which requires significant works to be done to encapsulate some of the contaminants that can't be removed.
The Newcastle Industrial Heritage Association says it'll fight the plans and will continue pushing to have some of the buildings retained for community purposes, such as a heritage centre or sporting complex.
We seem to be doing everything we can to eradicate every trace of the industries that have been here for the last 200 years. And really, in the bigger scene of things, that's what disappoints us the most, that this is just another nail in the coffin.
The demolition works are expected to be approved at a full council meeting on Monday. Colleen West, NBN News.
Newcastle Civic Administration has copped plenty of flack for the past 3 months over a 7-year $28 million tax proposal to repair, refurbish or replace council-owned infrastructure. Despite public opposition, Councillors have included it in the draft management plan and budget out for public inspection from Friday. City administrators now want ratepayers to view the proposal in the context of Council's overall plans.
Yes, I'd ask people to look at the big picture, to see that the administration is saying we will continue to make efficiency savings, and we're putting $1 million on the table over the next 2 years.
And the Lord Mayor maintains it is needed.
We're asking for the community infrastructure program to be supported because of the delivery of services that we will gain from that.
Council described its management plan for the next 12 months as back to basics, with an emphasis on city cleanliness, improvements to public recreation areas and roads. On the revenue side of the ledger, rates will rise by the allowable 3.6% and be formulated using a 25% base rate. Price increases are proposed, including parking fees and fines and admission to public swimming pools. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Daredevil stunts, breathtaking acrobatics and a carnival atmosphere. It's a recipe that's drawn crowds to the circus for decades.
There's an element of child in everything about a circus. It takes you back to the days when you had the sawdust on the floor and used to go along to the carnival and get your fairy floss and your popcorn. I don't think you ever grow out of that.
After months of rehearsals, Circus Monoxide has this week set up its big top harbourside in Newcastle. But if you're looking for animal tricks, there'll be none in sight, with Monoxide a purely theatrical circus.
We've tried to incorporate the theatrical, we've tried to incorporate lots of different elements, dance, clowning, all the way through to breathtaking kind of trapeze acts.
And it's a show everyone can be a part of, with the circus hosting free How to Be a Circus Performer workshops for people aged over 9.
Can anybody do it, or?
Oh, I reckon. Do you want to learn?
Why not? Oh! Sorry. It's certainly a lot harder than it looks. Oh!
But the performers warn the lessons aren't for the faint-hearted.
I think there's a mixture of terror.
And a lot to be afraid of.
Not much at all can go wrong with this.
But if taking to the flying trapeze or aerial spinning is too tummy-turning to contemplate, there's always a spot in the circus band. Christy Carter, NBN News.
Despite a racing career going back to the 1960s, Lochinvar's Lyndon McLeod has never driven the Targa Tasmania.
Targa has such a tremendous reputation that I just had to try it, and I've been trying to get there for about 5 years, and if I don't do it soon, I'll be too old to do it.
It represents a comeback of sorts, his last event a rally around Australia in 1979. This time he's in something much quicker than a VB Commodore, a turbocharged Subaru WRX.
It's a pretty competitive car, a pretty quick car, and it's natural, out of the box condition, so that'll be good enough for me to start with.
Navigator Brian Ford will also try the Subaru on for size after previous campaigns in a Ford Capri.
We've done a little bit of reconnaissance at normal road speed, but it'll be nothing like the competition pace that we'll be doing in the vehicle.
Katara driver Jeff Thomas will take his Lancia Delta Integrale south, one of only 6 in the country.
It's a four-wheel drive turbo and fairly light, so that's what you want.
But it's the tarmac surface which represents half of the appeal.
They're smooth, they're fast, they're twisty, everything that a driver likes, and you can do it legally.
The 2,000-kilometre event starts on Anzac Day. Adam McIlwright, NBN News. The Olympic rowing venue at Penrith is a long way from Newcastle on so many levels, but it's the working harbour which has given Hugh McLeod an edge.
You do come across wash from other boats and speed power boats, fishing boats and things, and that can be helpful in a race if you're used to tackling that in your training.
And training is something he's done plenty of, preparing for the national selection trials in Penrith, which start on Friday. Should he secure a berth in the Aussie team, it'll mark his second and possibly last shot at the Under-23 World Championships.
The big thing for us this time is to just see if he can be the one that can come out on top of the pile, hopefully to do that before he leaves the Under-23 category, which would be next year.
Times will dictate if the 20-year-old is part of a crew or races on his own in the single scull.
I'd had to pull a pretty fast time to do that, probably faster than I've ever gone before. But at the moment I'll be happy to take any boat at all as long as I get the green and gold.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News.
Motorists could be forgiven for thinking the price of unleaded was in a race to catch up to diesel. Today, the price boards at some service stations had them level pegging unleaded at a new record price of $1.39.9. Motorists aren't alone in their concern about the upward spiral. The Hunter Business Chamber is hearing about it from members.
It has had a lot of feedback from members who are very concerned about this extra cost that's now a real burden on their business.
The latest prices hit a level that economists and business believe will start to hurt the economy. Some of life's little luxuries like fast food are expected to take a hit, and any product that requires transport.
Look, there is no choice but to pass on those expenses, extra expense at some stage to the consumer.
And that's only the start of how higher fuel costs will hurt.
In terms of their ability to employ people, to train people and have the profits available to invest back into the business and even little things in the community like being able to donate funds to charities.
For those trying to understand petrol pricing, there was a cheaper price in Newcastle today. The terminal gate price for wholesale buyers who have to purchase a minimum 35,000 litre tanker load, the litre price was $1.26.5. Gary Blair, NBN News.
This morning's cloudy sky was the perfect backdrop for a sombre farewell as staff and patients put on a brave face as they vacated the Royal Newcastle Hospital.
A bit sad, actually quite sad.
Quite a sentimental attachment to the Royal. I met my wife here.
The future of the 189-year-old hospital is as yet undecided, although 20 expressions of interest for the development of the site have been received. These patients were swept up in history, the last to be treated at the Royal, the first to take up residence at the new Royal Newcastle Centre at Rankin Park.
Yeah, the last one out of the theatre yesterday, so go down and got a certificate there and all that sort of stuff, so it's quite good.
A nurse at the Royal for 13 years, Anthony Larkin says it's more than bricks and mortar that's formed the hospital's strong affiliation with Novocastrians.
Just that spirit inside, it will carry on to the new hospital.
While some prepared for the new adventure, for ward clerk Anna Darcy, today marked the final goodbye after a 32-year career at the Royal.
I'm going to turn out the lights as we go, and I wish everyone well in the news centre.
Christy Carter, NBN News. Traditionally a career launchpad for graduates, today's University of Newcastle graduation ceremony was coloured with a different brush. The ceremony recognised renowned painter Margaret Olley's more than 7-decade contribution to Australian art, awarding her a prestigious Doctor of Fine Arts. Margaret Olley admits her passion for painting is consuming, the artist almost waylaid from today's ceremony by the very thing she's been recognised for.
Rather than come here, I would have loved to have had a canvas and painted the river. It's a wonderful place for painters, Newcastle.
Margaret Olley first fell in love with Newcastle in the 1960s, an impression she's transferred to dozens of her now famous artworks. Today that passion lived on, as the coveted artist used her success to inspire others.
And go forth and do it with a great passion. And you can achieve anything in this world if you really want to.
That goal is still very much alive for Margaret, who says she's no plans of slowing down yet. Christy Carter, NBN News.
Shadowing the injured Andrew Johns at training this week, Jarrett Mullen represents Newcastle's next generation of halfback.
I don't think anyone can replace Joey. He's a great player and probably the best that's ever played the game, but I know I just got to try and step up, get my hands on the ball.
Far from leaving the 19-year-old in a spin, his promotion to first grade has been tackled with a level head. It's the senior players Mullen will look to when on the field, including Clint Newton, who sidestepped the bench to start the match and wear the number 12 jumper, once held by the injured Kirk Reynoldson.
Unfortunately, with Kirk being out, I've managed to get back in the starting spot, so I'm looking forward to the challenge, and Melbourne should be a good stepping stone for me to get some more match fitness and get back to some good form.
Containing the likes of Crocker and young gun Greg Inglis is challenge enough for the Knights, as the Melbourne side shows all the hallmarks of hitting its straps.
I think we've got to take this game basically the same way as we took the Cowboys, in the fact that they've got some good halves and they're really strong around the ruck, so we're looking forward to the challenge.
Adam McIlwright, NBN News. Dog trainers have been trying their luck at Cessnock since 1927, but the club's very future is under threat as Greyhound Racing New South Wales attempts to rein in a multi-million-dollar shortfall.
The people that have supported this track for, 79 years are not going to be happy with it being threatened as being just like a country non-tab track.
The state's peak greyhound racing body has proposed some 104 TAB meetings be cut from venues around the state, including 44 at Cessnock and 52 at Nowra.
We don't think it's fair at all the way they've targeted mainly two regions to share all the pain.
However, Greyhound Racing New South Wales insists no decision has been made, with both Cessnock and Nowra given until the 5th of May to justify keeping their TAB allocated meetings.
The showground virtually is at risk in this community facility because our core business is greyhound racing.
The Cessnock Greyhound community says it will call on every ounce of fight left in the dog to keep the venue open.
We're actually running a monster raffle today with about at least probably $8,000 worth of prizes. We've got a cake store today and we are going to take them to court and see how far we can get.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
This morning's final training session ran like clockwork, and while there was no sign of the skipper on field, he later joined his teammates for the trip south.
He didn't train today. He's coming with us this afternoon and he'll be at the game tomorrow.
But it's largely to help his teenage replacement, Jared Mullen, prepare for the match. The youngster has enjoyed a full week's preparation, which has built faith in his own abilities and his teammates in him.
It's about Jared himself getting confidence from just telling the boys what to do, and the boys full support behind him, and that's the way we're going to play.
2 Leaders captain Badiris knows it's his forwards that will have to lay the platform if they're a chance of burying the unwanted tag that they can't win without Andrew Johns.
The same when Joey's out there. If we don't go forward, Joey's not going to play his best. So if we go forward, Jared will play his best and we'll be right.
And it's hard to imagine just how Daniel Abraham is feeling. Almost a year to the day he suffered a horrible leg fracture against the Warriors, he'll make his long-awaited return to football against Cronulla in Premier League.
At 7:30 tomorrow night, I'll either be happy I got through the game, played well, disappointed I got through the game, didn't play that well, or in an airbag getting a ride back up the freeway to John Anna. So hopefully it's the first of the 3.
I'm sure you'd take even 2 over 3, mate.
Yeah, most definitely.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
It was a synchronised raid, 100 police officers swooping on 4 Newcastle homes at dawn this morning after a 10-month surveillance operation.
We arrested a male person at Carrington. That was a catalyst for our execution of 4 search warrants at a number of premises throughout the Newcastle Waratah areas.
University Drive at Waratah West was closed to traffic as police carried out one raid, arresting 4 people. Another 5 were arrested after searches of properties at Lambton, Carrington and Mayfield West, all 9 charged with supplying methamphetamine in large and commercial quantities. 5 were this afternoon refused bail in Newcastle Local Court. Another 4 remain in police custody. While 81 grams of crystal ice methamphetamine worth $70,000 was uncovered in today's raids, police say they've ended a $750,000 commercial drug operation. $20,000 cash and $250,000 worth of assets believed to have been purchased with proceeds from the sale of the drug were also impounded. Today's arrests follow that of a Merewether woman last December and a Sydney supplier last month.
This is a conclusion of this operation where we have basically unravelled an entire drug distribution network which covered the Hunter area.
Police warning more raids are imminent.
We've got our information in relation to other activity in this command, and we'll be taking action on those as well in the near future.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
Well, not every player in a team sport can be a superstar or a game breaker. You need your players who are tireless workers and are most of the time quiet achievers. Canberra Raiders' Alan Tongue fits that description perfectly. With the exception of his hometown of Tamworth, he's little known outside the Canberra region. With red hair and a smallish build and has had plenty of starts off the bench, he goes about his business every week. Now, last week's game against the Warriors was different. He made his usual mountain of tackles, 46 to be exact, and scored a nice try. This nice one here from dummy half as he burrowed over to keep his team in the game. But as when the Raiders were behind on the scoreboard with minutes to go, Alan Tongue stands up and creates some brilliance to make something out of nothing to claim his second try and seal victory for his team. Now, his teammates already know how much he contributes and they celebrate with him. But it's great to see workers of our game like Alan getting some limelight they so rightly deserve. And who said footballers don't have brains? Have a look at this. Matt Bickerstaff's head bulging. Obviously not big enough for his grey matter, but the teammates, they don't care. Plenty of pats and congratulations right on the sore spot. On to round 7 tonight. I like the Eels off Dubai to beat the Tigers and get their season underway. On Saturday, 3 games. I like the Warriors, competition leaders Cowboys and the Knights to win. 3 games Sunday as well. The Bulldogs, Broncos and the Dragons to win. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week.
Labor stalwart Bryce Gaudry has been the member for Newcastle for 15 years, but there's speculation he could be replaced by Newcastle's Lord Mayor.
I wouldn't rule out anything that allows me to be part of the advancement of the city, of this local government area and this Hunter Valley.
Speaking from Sydney today, the besieged MP said the rumoured deal is a betrayal of Labor's rank-and-file pre-selection process, adding it'd be a political backflip for the Lord Mayor to join the ALP.
John Tate is not a Labor Party member. He's never been a Labor Party person, and no way would I support someone being parachuted into this area. A pre-selection should take place.
He wouldn't name those behind the alleged negotiations, but said power brokers and organisers from the Sydney ALP are involved. Minister for the Hunter Michael Costa is believed to be behind the Tate push. Both Costa and Councillor Tate have clashed with Bryce Gaudry over plans to cut the Newcastle rail line.
This is a sellout. This is a second-rate interchange.
What has Mr Gaudry achieved over the last 4 terms that he's been in government with improving public transport?
Bryce Gaudry says he has the full support of the Newcastle ALP and won't be standing aside.
My belief is that I have represented the people of Newcastle strongly, and the government has paid close attention to the needs of Newcastle, both in terms of industry and the building of infrastructure.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's the beginning of the end for Incitec Pivot's Cockle Creek operation, which was fed byproduct from the neighbouring Pasminko site to help make fertiliser. But since the lead smelter closed 2.5 years ago, the superphosphate manufacturer always knew its days were numbered. Now it too will close by 2009.
Overall for the community, this is a pretty good outcome. It will mean the site gets cleaned up, and it will mean that it will be available for other development.
Lake Macquarie City Council has earmarked the Incitec Pivot site for light industrial use when remediation work is finished.
Their main problem is that the site's underlain with slag from the former lead smelting operations, So they really need to remove those buildings before they can get on with that work.
Next door, Council is now able to start pinpointing parts of the old Pasminko site for future residential use.
Previously, while Incitec remained, that land probably wasn't going to be suitable for residential development, but we can go and look at that again now.
As for Incitec Pivot's 25 Cockle Creek workers, a spokesman for the company says job losses are inevitable, but will look for other places within the organisation, including its fertiliser distribution plant on Kooragang Island. Adam McKilreek, NBN News.
Finishing last season 35th on the European Order of Merit, it was another stat that plagued Cherie Burns last year. Ranked 150th for putting on tour, she spent the summer honing her technique.
When I know that there's just one thing in my game that's stopping me from being top 10 every week, and I've done the work on that now, it's quite exciting.
She's now aiming for a top 10 finish on the European Tour this year, but come June, her attention will switch to America and qualifying for the US Open. Michael Diamond is searching for hidden gems in the world of Australian shooting. The multiple Olympic and Commonwealth Games medalist spends much of his time these days targeting juniors. He was a hit at Awabba today with the Hunter's Young talent, given a rare insight to one of the world's best. 2 games in Newcastle Rugby League tonight, with Curry hosting Macquarie tomorrow and Lakes taking on the competition leaders on Sunday. In round 2 of Newcastle and Hunter Rugby tomorrow, Hamilton will have its hands full against University, while the Blacks are among those enjoying their first home game of the season. And Western has a tough job in the opening match of round 2 in the NBN Soccer League tonight against Edgeworth. It's the last weekend to impress Newcastle selectors, and Curry's Daniel Palmer furthered his late push for inclusion. The fullback had claimed a second try before Macquarie even held the ball in attack. While the Scorpions were flat out hanging onto it, this Bulldog chased down everything. His third had Curry up 24-0. But then Macquarie started to make things stick, and when they did, the points started flowing. Jay Bolton with the first. It was now the visitors who had their tails up, Robbie O'Davis finding Ryan Johnson with room as the fight back continued all the way to a 2-point victory. Overnight in Cessnock, the Goannas looked like the side of old, with Kane Bradley and Les Smith combining before sending Adam Pine over for the start of a first half double for the winger. Wyong hasn't enjoyed the best of starts this season, but you wonder just how bad it could be if Dean Amos wasn't around. After setting up the Roos first, the halfback did it all himself with a trademark solo effort. If he was hard to stop, getting a hold of Peter Jansen was nigh on impossible. His effort helped forge a 32-24 win, and it's sure to secure him a spot in the Newcastle team.
His champion father, Max, God love him, he was a great supporter of mine, and that was the first thing I thought of when I went over the line.
Steam locomotives have been an obsession for thousands of rail enthusiasts ever since the first one was brought to the Hunter from England in 1911.
I have a love for big engines and I have a love for little engines.
For many families, that passion continues through the generations.
It brings back a lot of memories to many old people.
It's grey and blue.
But the love of these engines isn't just driven by a need for steam. The mechanics, engineering and design of the historic locomotives still have people in awe. While some were content hanging to get a glimpse of the 3801 locomotive as it puffed into Maitland Station today, others were looking for a rarer jewel. Having serviced the coal mines for around 70 years, the 10-class loco, built 95 years ago, was today letting off steam at the Hunter Valley Training Company. The site is set to house the Maitland Heritage Steam Park and the headquarters of Steamfest, thanks to a $1 million grant delivered today.
Training new apprentices here, making sure we'll have an ongoing respect for heritage in New South Wales.
The actual old workers that worked in this workshop that are involved in apprentice mentoring programs now and passing the skills down, and this allows it to all happen on this site.
Steamfest continues tomorrow. Christy Carter, NBN News.